Kathie Davis from Davis Travaglini, LLC, joining us today. I'm John Lee with St. Louis Real Estate Investors Association. Today is April 23rd, and we're here for another updated session with Kathie. So, Kathie, good to see you. You're smiling again. I always love it when you're smiling.
Hi, everybody. Let me turn my stereo down. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks. I think I wasn't with you last week. Chris had to fill in for me because I was in court in St. Charles. And I would say the number one topic that I want to talk to you about today is the new county EREP program. We are getting a lot of negative feedback about the program, that the portal doesn't work. When you call the phone number, the person that answers it doesn't know anything about, can't answer any questions. People apply for the assistance and they get an email saying they've applied, but nothing else, and nothing else is forthcoming. So as always, I'm going to ask you to let me know if you've had any experiences with it, if you've had any luck getting any money paid out for it, what kind of documents they're making you sign, et cetera, et cetera. You may recall that I told you a couple of weeks ago that the county was making us file an affidavit when we file a new rent and possession lawsuit saying that we wouldn't apply for the money. That doesn't stop the tenant from applying for the money. And I believe that you can then, participate and give them documents. I mean, this is $30 million, and we're just hearing that it's just an incredible bureaucratic tangle. And I'm kind of wondering where the money's going, if it's going out at all. The county spent $3 million of the $30 million hiring some consulting firm from California. The scuttlebutt is that staffers in the county are very unhappy with this firm, and blaming everything on them, but they got to get this fixed. I mean, it's a bad situation. I think that we're going to be paying the taxes that have paid for this $30 million, but nobody's going to benefit from it. We also believe that it would be easy for people to steal this money if they're insiders and that kind of thing. And we're not sure that there's appropriate checks and balances on it. But like I said, I'd like to hear from you if you've been able to apply for that county money, or if your tenants have, and if you have had success. We had hearings yesterday afternoon in front of Judge Medler, excuse me, in St. Louis County, attempting to strike the CDC moratorium on several cases. On one of them, the defendant did not show up, and they had, the sheriff had come out to evict them, and they had given them a CDC moratorium declaration that was not completely filled out. They had not checked the box where they would be saying under penalty of perjury that they had applied for aid and attempted to make partial payments. And I think they didn't check this box because it would have been perjury if they had checked it, because they didn't make any partial payments since a year ago, January. They owe $26,000. And as those of you who have been through this aid process know, if the tenant applies for aid, the aid entity contacts the landlord to get verification and paperwork and that kind of thing. So we don't think they ever applied for anything ever. So the judge has granted our motion to strike on that one. On the other two, the defendants showed up. In both cases, they had not made any payments for excessively long periods of time, 10 to 12 months. And we had not gotten any aid applications. In the one case, the guy who was probably a drug dealer, we elicited testimony that he had pulled guns on contractors, on the air conditioning guy, and that kind of thing. And he, said that he didn't have any money coming in, so he wasn't able to make any payments at all since last summer. And the judge asked him, well, what are you living on? And he said, food stamps. Well, he's driving a car, he's doing other stuff. I mean, he's getting income from somewhere. And he did provide a printout to the court of a confirmation email from the county EREP program dated April 5th that he had put in an application, but he must not have put in the landlord's information or any other information, because the landlord hasn't gotten any of the confirming paperwork that the landlord is supposed to get. And, as you know, if the tenants don't follow through on their applications and all the paperwork and, bureaucracy, the money's not going to be granted. And but we feel that he fails on making, attempting to make partial payments because he hasn't made any. We don't know what the judge is going to do. And on the other one, um, the woman admitted that she was working and she still hasn't paid anything since last summer. She had something from the Salvation Army last fall claiming that the landlord wouldn't cooperate, but the landlord testified that she processes these applications all the time and is happy to cooperate to get the money and that kind of thing. So there was some disconnect there. But again, that person is working, admitted she was working, and has failed to make any payments. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We have learned that something is going on in the county with these CDC declarations. Since the county started issuing evictions again, April 5th, they have essentially caught up. Happen. As we had predicted, a lot of those evictions went away because the person in between whenever the eviction request was filed, which could have been as long ago as, last March, and the date when the sheriff contacted the landlord, the person had moved, they had made payment arrangements, et cetera, et cetera. But in many cases, when the sheriff showed up to meet the landlord and evict the person, the tenant produced a CDC declaration. We found out that these declarations are being posted on the doors of people who are about to be evicted. The sheriff says it's not them that's doing this. So we don't know who it is. We've got a couple of clients with cameras who are trying to find out, and we're hoping they'll let us know. We think that the only way that they could figure out what is essentially a handful of cases in comparison to the entire cases that are on CaseNet for St. Louis County, the only way that they could figure out who's slated for eviction is that somebody in the court system is giving them these lists. And that is really not fair. The court system is supposed to be neutral. It's not supposed to be providing, this kind of information to one side or the other. We've already put up with the idea that they add stuff to the summons that talks about where the person can get assistance and that kind of thing. I'm not really all that opposed to that. I don't like it that they give them names of nonprofit landlord tenant lawyer groups that will represent them. I don't think that's really fair, but we haven't really objected to that. But giving out this information so that the person can just fill out the CDC declaration as the sheriff is walking up the sidewalk and then get the eviction stopped is, I think, horrifying. These lists are being given out. So if any of you have a sheriff eviction scheduled in St. Louis County, keep an eye to see if someone is sneaking up to the tenant's door to put this declaration on it. You certainly can tell them to remove themselves from your property because they're trespassing and they have no right to be there. And I personally don't have any problem with you removing that from the door because I don't think it's placed by any official person. I think it's placed by, groups that are somehow sneaking this information out. I have personal theories about how they're getting it, but I'm not going to say what they are until I can verify it. But keep an eye out for that, guys. And as usual, let me know if you have anything like that happen. In big federal news, some of you may have heard of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, where you have to give the person that owes money all their rights and do things in a certain way. It doesn't really apply to people who are evicting or whatever from their own property, but it applies to us as attorneys. And if the latest rule on this goes through, starting May 3rd, we're going to have to put the CDC declaration with every lawsuit that we file with the summons that goes to the tenant. You may have seen in the news that the county council was trying to pass their own eviction moratorium. That was essentially almost verbatim the same text as the CDC moratorium. I had a conversation with an aide to one of the council people, and I told them that we would be happy if the county council passed that because we were going to then add them as defendants to our takings lawsuit. and hope to obtain a bigger recovery in that regard. So amazingly, at the meeting on a meeting earlier this week, they decided that maybe they needed to look at it again and redo it, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying it was because of what I said, but you never know. They also, I think, I had a long conversation with this person, and I said, there's the three branches of government. The county council is executive branch. They can't tell the judicial branch what they can or can't do. We've already suffered for a year under Judge Burton's eviction stay, and it's finally over. And I don't think Judge Burton is going to be happy to have the county council tell the judicial branch what it can do. It really can't do that. And there's a kind of a interesting legal dispute about whether the sheriff reports to the county or the judge. And I can tell you it's the judge, but because their paychecks come through the county, they seem to think that gives them some power, but it doesn't. That's just administrative and has nothing to do with the chain of command. So we're interested to see what will happen with that. Those of you who manage property for other people, let me go back to this fair debt thing. If you file your own lawsuits, you're probably going to have to put that CDC moratorium in with your summons papers when it gets served on defendants. The Supreme Court a few weeks ago, the Missouri Supreme Court added a new phase to reopening called Phase 4. It has Phase 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they all require various levels of the COVID in the community, and then they let the courts do certain things. Phase 4 is for when the vaccine is widely available. And I would say right now, it's widely available everywhere. Anyone can get it. I'm told that you can go down to the Dome 7 days a week between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., walk in with no prior appointment, and get the Pfizer vaccine. All you have to show is that you're a resident of Missouri. I am told that many, many Walgreens and CVS's have lots of appointments available. And I'm sure there are other places that have things available too. In fact, my friend who has been volunteering, helping with vaccination clinics in the city, said the city decided to shut one of their clinics down at the community college because they didn't have enough work. They didn't have enough people. And like I said, I think a lot of people are going to the Dome and getting it there. The rate of vaccination is dropping off a little bit. The supply exceeds the demand right now. So it's my opinion that all the counties should be going to Phase 4. Of course, St. Louis City and County are not in Phase 4. They're not even in Phase 3. I don't know why they are staying in Phase 2, but they are. They have both started criminal jury trials to work on the backlog of incarcerated criminals. This is appropriate. They have a constitutional right to a speedy trial. And if they're being incarcerated prior to being found guilty, they should get precedence. I mean, I hate to say it. I have some jury trials I'd very much like to try, but it is their turn first. But I think in the city and the county, both, they're doing 2 criminal jury trials a week. I think they don't want to summon larger juror pools than that, to allow social distancing. But those things are going. And those things are just like anything else. There's a big backlog of these trials, but once push comes to shove, a lot of them are going to plead out or be dismissed or go away for other reasons. Not that many of them are really going to go. Supposedly the county has 600. They had 600 evictions that were waiting too. Not that many of them are actually going to be tried, but it'll still take a little while for them to get through that backlog. But the fact that they're doing that means that they're opening the courts up some more and more things are happening. So we're hoping that the county will go to Phase 3 this weekend. But as usual, we'll let you know as soon as we know something. We have heard, and we've heard this before, the city is just a rumor mill. We have heard that the city is going to open up all evictions on May 3rd. We had heard that about April 5th too. They didn't do it, but supposedly this is on even better authority. I mean, it's actually judges who are telling us this. So we think it might happen unless there's some, crazy resurgence of the virus in the next few days. We have not heard much one way or another about the recent city federal funds and how people are doing getting those dispersed out. We don't know anything about that. Not much feedback at all. I think, with respect to the city, because the change in the mayor just happened. The gossip seems to be all tilted towards that and not towards other things. So again, I'm reliant on you, my friends, to tell me if you or your tenant has applied for assistance under the new program in the city and if you've been successful or not. Jefferson and St. Charles are in phase 4. I wasn't with you last Friday because I was in physical court in St. Charles. I have a trial in Jefferson next week. So, and most of the counties in the state are now at phase 4, which basically means they're pretty much open for business. The courts are open for business. You have to wear a mask and practice social distancing, although enforcement of that is variant in rural counties. But most of the counties are there. Jackson County is in phase 4. That's probably the biggest next county other than our counties here in the urban area. What else have I got? I think that's all I have. I don't know if I told you this before. I may have. I totally have COVID brain, but and time sort of warps for us because we're so on these Zoom calls all day long. It's just bizarre. But when they started issuing the rent and possession evictions that have been sitting in the queue, they started with the oldest ones, which is fair. So we had a couple that were pretty old. And I just happened to be looking at one of those cases on April 5th and found out that the eviction writ had been issued. So I told Christine, and she checked some of her old cases because Christine is extremely organized and she keeps a detailed list of all these cases. So she went through and we found out that about a dozen of our oldest ones had been issued. So we ran over to the courthouse with them to give them to the sheriff, which we weren't allowed to go up to the sheriff, but they had a giant box in the lobby prepared for all this flood of evictions they were going to get. And there were no others that came in. And our friends in the courthouse kept telling us day after day, we're printing more out, running them over there, and nobody else was filing any. Well, we weren't getting notified on CaseNet that they were being issued. We were just following Christine's list and checking all these cases, manually. So we realized that the other attorneys didn't realize that they were being evicted and didn't have lists and weren't checking or whatever, didn't know. We then found out that for some reason, the CaseNet feature that would notify an attorney that a writ was issued was not working. My personal theory is that it was deliberately disabled by someone and that this was to allow time for these secret people who are running out to these properties at night and posting these CDC declaration forms to catch up and get all those done. We have gotten a lot of CDC declaration forms in the county from tenants who are about to be evicted. And we are working our way through the ones that we think that we can win motions to strike those on. We are still at a point with the moratorium where the highest court that's ruled so far, which is the Sixth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals, has said that it's unconstitutional and refused to allow a government stay of their ruling. So it's technically been declared unconstitutional at this point. Our local judge in St. Louis County did not want to rule unconstitutional. So he ruled on my motions yesterday based on factual defects. I think that's all I have. Does anybody got any questions or comments?
Yeah, Kathy,
Yeah.
when I was cutting my grass a while back, I know I had mentioned it to Chris. There was a bunch of people from Arch Defenders that was going around with a list of people and giving the declarations out back then.
When was that?
Around the beginning of the summer, and then this
Last
past
summer?
summer, and then a long time ago, because we're going into our third summer now with this.
Okay. Is that property in the city or the county?
It's in the city.
Uh-huh. Well, I think some of these not-for-profits, like Arch City Defenders and, like the legal clinics at WashU and St. Louis U, they have a lot of law students who are probably willing to run out and run around and post these declarations out and, be do-gooders. So they've got people to do it. The question is where they're getting the list of these evictions, because we can't figure out how they could find that on CaseNet without knowing which cases to look for.
Yeah, I was very surprised by it, but
Yeah.
and then proving it is the other problem,
Oh, I'm not worried about proving it. I just want to alert my landlords so that they'll go take them down
Yeah,
and kick the people off their property.
yeah. I think what needs to happen, or at least what I do, is I go by my properties at least, I try to make it by twice a week just to see if anything's there or if anything's changed. And if people are doing that, they'll probably catch that if they're being stuck on the door, of their building.
And we have some clients with cameras and we've got them looking to see what
Yeah.
they can find. So, anything else, guys? You all, the ones of you that I can see look very thoughtful. The ones I can't
Thank
see,
you.
I don't know what you're doing, but
The rest of us might be brain dead.
I don't want to know too much information. You're certainly entitled to the privacy of no video, but
Kathie, are these people able to follow the sheriffs around and give it to the tenants at the time that they show up?
I don't think the sheriffs would like that, and they are generally armed. So
Right.
I think they're getting a list, and we think they're going later in the evening and putting these things on the doors.
Mhm.
And as I've said before, if they're eligible for this aid and they can apply for the aid, I generally think the landlord should cooperate with that. But if these are people that are getting these declarations and they've never lifted a finger or applied for aid, and they've gotten the stimulus money and the enhanced unemployment and all this stuff, and they're just using it as a last minute stop of the sheriff coming out, I'm not in favor of that. And I think that we should not have to put up with that. Okay, well, I guess I will see you guys next week.
Hey, yeah, appreciate you coming on with us again this week, Kathie.
Yeah.
Thank
You guys
very
are all
much.
pretty quiet this week. So I'll see you next week. And in the meantime, get in touch with me if you have any feedback about the aid programs and how it's going.
Thank you so much, Kathie.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
See y'all.
We'll see you next week. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks.